In the depths of human psychology lies a hidden force that can quietly shape, distort, and even destroy relationships and lives. Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers in the study of the human mind, warned us about this unseen shadow lurking within every individual. But what exactly is this shadow, and why should you be wary of the most dangerous signs it reveals in a person? In this exploration, we will uncover how the unconscious parts of ourselves, often denied or ignored, can surface as destructive behaviors. You will learn to recognize the subtle yet alarming signs when someone's shadow takes control, and why projection, a psychological defense mechanism, and can turn trust into turmoil. Most importantly, we will delve into how awareness and integration of these hidden aspects can lead not only to healing, but also to safeguarding your own well-being. Stay with us as we reveal why staying alert is not just a choice, but a necessity when it comes to understanding the most perilous traits hidden within us all. Carl Gustav Jung introduced the world to a revolutionary concept in psychology known as the shadow. This shadow is not some external darkness, but rather a part of ourselves that exists in the depths of the unconscious mind. It is composed of the traits, impulses, desires, and emotions that we do not acknowledge consciously. Those aspects of our personality that we often find uncomfortable, shameful, or socially unacceptable. While we tend to present an idealized version of ourselves to the world, the shadow harbors the qualities we reject or deny. However, rather than disappearing, these elements continue to exert a powerful influence from beneath the surface, quietly shaping our behavior and perception. Jung believed that the shadow is universal. Every person carries one. It is not an inherently evil or bad part of the psyche, but a natural and necessary component of the whole self. The danger arises, however, when we refuse to recognize or integrate this shadow. Ignoring it leads to repression, and repression only serves to strengthen the shadow's unconscious power. When left unexamined, the shadow can manifest in ways that are harmful to ourselves and others. It can drive us to act out impulses we are not aware of or project our unwanted feelings onto others, leading to misunderstandings, conflict, and sometimes even violence. This hidden self often contains qualities that contradict our conscious identity. For example, a person who views themselves as kind and moral may have unconscious feelings of anger, jealousy, or selfishness buried within their shadow. Because these feelings are uncomfortable and socially frowned upon, they are pushed out of conscious awareness. Yet, they still influence behavior subtly, or sometimes explosively. The shadow may reveal itself in moments of stress, fatigue, or emotional turmoil. Times when the conscious mind's control weakens. Jung stressed the importance of shadow work, a process of self-exploration and acknowledgement of the shadow's presence. By bringing these unconscious aspects into consciousness, an individual gains insight into their true nature and motivations. This process requires courage and honesty, as confronting the shadow often means facing parts of ourselves that we would rather avoid. But it is only through this confrontation that personal growth and psychological balance can be achieved. In practical terms, understanding the shadow allows us to better grasp why certain people behave destructively or dangerously. When a person denies their shadow, they become more susceptible to acting out unconsciously through harmful behaviors. This might manifest as aggression, dishonesty, manipulation, or even cruelty. All behaviors that originate from repressed inner conflicts or unresolved emotional pain. The shadow is not something external that happens to us. It is part of our own psyche that, when ignored, grows stronger and more volatile. Moreover, the shadow can distort one's perception of reality, because these unwanted qualities are denied within oneself. There is a psychological tendency to project them onto others. This projection creates illusions about other people and situations, which can lead to misplaced fears, prejudices, or hostility. Understanding that everyone has a shadow, and that it can influence behavior unconsciously, is key to approaching others with empathy rather than judgment. Jung's concept of the shadow challenges the simplistic notion of good versus evil by revealing the complex and often contradictory nature of human psychology. It encourages us to look beyond surface appearances and societal roles to confront the darker parts of ourselves. This is not only crucial for personal psychological health, but also for maintaining healthy interpersonal relationships and a more compassionate society. By becoming aware of the shadow, individuals gain the power to integrate these hidden elements into a more authentic and whole self. This integration is the foundation for emotional maturity and resilience, and it acts as a safeguard against the dangerous, unconscious expressions of the shadow. Thus, the shadow is both a warning and an opportunity. A warning of the potential dangers lurking in the unexamined psyche, and an opportunity for profound self-awareness and transformation. While Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is central to understanding the complexity of human psychology, it is equally important to recognize when this hidden self crosses from mere unconscious presence to a destructive force. The shadow, by its very nature, harbors qualities that society often deems unacceptable or taboo. When these traits remain unacknowledged and continue to fester in the unconscious, they can erupt in ways that are harmful both to the individual and those around them. Identifying the warning signs of a shadow becoming destructive is crucial for staying alert and protecting oneself in personal and social relationships. One of the earliest and most subtle signs that a person's shadow is manifesting destructively is the presence of deceit and self-deception. When the shadow is active beneath the surface, and an individual may start to distort reality to preserve their conscious self-image or to avoid facing uncomfortable truths about themselves. This often leads to dishonesty, not only toward others, but also toward themselves. They may rationalize harmful behavior or blame external circumstances for internal conflicts, refusing to take responsibility. This deceit is a defense mechanism, aimed at keeping the shadow hidden, but ultimately causes greater psychological fragmentation. Another critical indicator is manipulation, which often arises from unconscious attempts to control one's environment to compensate for inner turmoil. A person whose shadow is destructive might use others as pawns in their psychological games without fully understanding the motives driving this behavior. This can involve emotional blackmail, guilt tripping, or subtle forms of coercion that erode trust and create toxic dynamics in relationships. Because the individual is unaware or unwilling to confront their shadow. These manipulative tactics serve as unconscious efforts to regain a sense of power or stability. Sudden and unpredictable mood swings are also a common warning sign. The shadow can influence emotions in ways that the conscious mind cannot easily regulate. A person might appear calm and composed one moment and then explode in anger, bitterness, or despair the next. These fluctuations are often triggered by unresolved internal conflicts that the person is not consciously aware of. Such volatility not only affects the individual's well-being, but can also make those around them feel unsafe or uncertain, leading to social isolation or confrontation. Projection is perhaps one of the most insidious ways the shadow becomes distractive. This psychological mechanism involves attributing one's own undesirable traits or impulses onto others, effectively displacing personal responsibility. When a person projects their shadow onto others, they may accuse innocent people of harboring negative intentions or criticize behaviors that reflect their own unconscious impulses. This not only creates misunderstanding and conflict, but also prevents the individual from healing and integrating their shadow. Projection distorts reality and fuels a cycle of blame and victimization that is difficult to break. It is important to note that these destructive signs often operate beneath conscious awareness. The individual may sincerely believe in their justifications or see themselves as victims rather than perpetrators. This lack of insight into the shadow's influence makes it all the more dangerous, as the person is unlikely to seek help or change without external intervention or profound self-reflection. In some cases, destructive shadow behaviors can escalate into more severe psychological disturbances, including addiction, compulsive behaviors, or even violence. These extreme manifestations reflect a psyche overwhelmed by the repressed shadow, struggling to express itself through any available means. Recognizing early warning signs is therefore not only a matter of interpersonal safety, but also a critical step toward psychological intervention and healing. From a Jungian perspective, these warning signs are not to be feared, but to be seen as urgent messages from the unconscious mind. They signal an imbalance that demands attention and conscious engagement. By becoming aware of these signs, both in oneself and in others, it becomes possible to intervene constructively. This can involve setting boundaries, encouraging self-awareness, or seeking therapeutic support to begin the process of shadow integration. Understanding when the shadow becomes destructive enables us to navigate relationships with greater caution and compassion. It reminds us that beneath harmful behaviors often lies unhealed pain or fear that needs acknowledgement rather than condemnation. However, staying alert to these signs also empowers us to protect our own psychological and emotional well-being, preventing us from becoming entangled in toxic dynamics. Ultimately, recognizing the shadow's destructive expressions is the first crucial step toward transformation. It opens the door to healing, not just for the individual whose shadow is active, but for those around them as well. Fostering environments where psychological wholeness and healthy relationships can flourish. In the framework of Carl Jung's analytical psychology, self-awareness plays a pivotal role in addressing the shadow's potentially destructive power. The shadow represents those unconscious aspects of the self, traits, impulses, and desires that the conscious mind rejects or suppresses. However, rather than being a fixed or inherently negative entity, the shadow is an integral part of the psyche that demands acknowledgement and integration to foster psychological wholeness. Without self-awareness, the shadow remains a hidden force that can manifest unpredictably, causing harm and chaos. It is through conscious confrontation and integration that the shadow's energies can be transformed into sources of strength and creativity. The journey towards self-awareness begins with the courage to look inward and recognize uncomfortable truths about oneself. This is often a difficult process, as it requires individuals to face parts of their identity they have long denied or avoided. These repressed elements can include envy, jealousy, aggression, selfishness, or other traits socially stigmatized or personally feared. The initial realization that these dark qualities reside within is both unsettling and essential. It disrupts the illusion of a perfect, wholly good self, introducing complexity and vulnerability. However, it also initiates the path toward genuine growth, as true transformation can only occur when one embraces the totality of the self. Self-awareness is not merely intellectual recognition. It involves emotional honesty and a willingness to experience the shadow's influence without immediate judgment or repression. This means observing one's reactions, patterns, and impulses with curiosity and openness. For example, noticing moments of irritability or envy without condemning oneself for having them allows these feelings to be examined and understood, rather than ignored or projected onto others. Through this mindful observation, the unconscious aspects begin to emerge into consciousness, reducing their power to disrupt from the shadows. Jung emphasized that integration of the shadow is a lifelong process requiring persistent effort and reflection. It involves honing the shadow parts, accepting them as elements of one's psyche that, though uncomfortable, are real and significant. This acceptance does not mean indulging in harmful behaviors, but recognizing their presence as signals of unmet needs, unresolved conflicts, or areas requiring healing. Integration allows the individual to reclaim the energy tied up in repression, redirecting it toward positive outlets such as creativity, empathy, and resilience. Therapeutic practices such as psychotherapy, journaling, dream analysis, and meditation can facilitate this process by providing safe spaces to explore the unconscious material. For instance, dreams often serve as a bridge between conscious awareness and the shadow, presenting symbolic imagery that, when interpreted thoughtfully, reveals hidden fears and desires. Similarly, journaling helps to articulate thoughts and feelings that might otherwise remain unexamined. Meditation cultivates a non-judgmental awareness that enables one to witness shadow impulses without being overwhelmed by them. Moreover, self-awareness fosters humility and empathy, as recognizing one's shadow diminishes tendencies toward moral superiority or harsh judgment of others. When we understand that everyone harbors their own unconscious struggles, we develop compassion and patience for human imperfections. This relational shift promotes healthier social interactions and decreases the likelihood of projecting our shadow onto others, which often fuels conflict and misunderstanding. However, achieving this level of self-awareness is challenging, particularly in a society that often prizes outward success, perfection, and control over internal complexity. Many individuals resist facing their shadow due to fear of stigma, shame, or the destabilization of their self-concept. Yet, without this confrontation, the shadow continues to exert influence covertly, increasing the risk of destructive outcomes described earlier. By embracing the shadow with conscious awareness, individuals gain access to a richer, more authentic existence. The energy once trapped in denial is liberated, fueling personal growth and fostering a sense of inner harmony. This process aligns closely with Jung's concept of individuation, the lifelong quest to become a fully realized self by harmonizing conscious and unconscious elements. In essence, self-awareness acts as both the key and the compass in navigating the complexities of the shadow. It illuminates hidden facets of the psyche, enabling transformative work that can shift destructive patterns into opportunities for healing and creativity. Through self-awareness, the shadow ceases to be a source of fear and becomes a wellspring of deeper understanding, vitality, and wholeness. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow extends far beyond the individual's psyche to influence interpersonal relationships and broader societal dynamics. When unconscious shadow elements remain unacknowledged and unintegrated, they tend to manifest in ways that disrupt harmony and foster misunderstanding. The shadow not only affects how we perceive ourselves, but also how we perceive and interact with others. Its influence can generate conflict, prejudice, projection, and division, thereby posing significant challenges to social cohesion and mutual understanding. At the core of this dynamic lies the psychological mechanism of projection. Projection occurs when individual attributes unwanted or denied parts of their own shadow onto others. Instead of recognizing these traits within themselves, people unconsciously project them outward, perceiving others as embodying the very qualities they reject in themselves. For example, a person who harbors aggressive impulses but refuses to acknowledge them may view others as hostile or dangerous, even when this is not objectively true. This distorted perception feeds interpersonal conflicts, misunderstandings, and distrust. Projection is not merely a personal issue. It has profound social implications. On a larger scale, collective shadow projection can give rise to prejudice, stereotyping, and discrimination. Groups or societies may demonize other groups, seeing them as threats or enemies, while ignoring their own shadow traits. Historical conflicts, ethnic tensions, and social injustices often stem from these unconscious projections. By failing to recognize the shadow's presence within themselves, societies perpetuate cycles of fear, hatred, and violence. Furthermore, the shadow's influence can be observed in social phenomena such as scapegoating and mass hysteria. Scapegoating involves blaming a particular individual or group for broader social problems. thereby deflecting attention from the collective shadow elements that contribute to those problems. This process alleviates the discomfort of self-reflection, but intensifies division and resentment. Mass hysteria, or moral panics, similarly emerge from unconscious fears and projections that become amplified in social contexts, often resulting in irrational behavior and conflict. On a personal relationship level, the shadow can erode trust and intimacy. When individuals are unaware of their shadow, they may respond defensively or judgmentally to their partner's behaviors, mistaking their own inner conflicts as external threats. This misattribution can lead to cycles of blame, resentment, and emotional distance. Additionally, partners may trigger each other's shadow elements, leading to repeated conflicts unless both parties cultivate self-awareness and emotional maturity. Conversely, recognizing and integrating the shadow can transform relationships and society. When individuals acknowledge their own shadow traits, they reduce the impulse to project onto others. This promotes empathy and understanding, as people realize that negative qualities are part of the human condition rather than unique flaws of others. In relationships, this awareness fosters deeper communication, acceptance, and healing. Partners learn to see each other more fully, including their vulnerabilities and complexities, enabling authentic connection. On a societal level, the integration of the collective shadow encourages inclusivity and reconciliation. Social movements advocating for justice, equality, and peace often involve bringing hidden or suppressed issues into the light. By confronting uncomfortable truths, such as systemic oppression, historical wrongs, and cultural biases, societies can begin processes of healing and transformation. This requires collective courage to face difficult realities and work toward constructive change. Jung's insights into the shadow also underscore the importance of leadership and education in mitigating shadow-driven conflict. Leaders who recognize their own shadows and foster open dialogue create environments where diversity is respected and misunderstandings are addressed constructively. Educational systems that teach emotional intelligence and self-reflection equip individuals with tools to manage shadow impulses and build healthier communities. Moreover, art, literature, and cultural practices provide valuable avenues for exploring and expressing the shadow. A creative expression allows individuals and societies to confront darker aspects symbolically, facilitating catharsis and insight. This cultural engagement can break down barriers of fear and denial, promoting greater awareness of the shared human experience. However, the shadow's influence remains a constant challenge, as it is deeply embedded in human nature. Vigilance, continuous self-examination, and collective efforts are essential to prevent its destructive potential from undermining relationships and social order. The shadow teaches us that ignorance and denial are fertile ground for conflict, while awareness and integration open the door to harmony and growth. Ultimately, understanding the shadow's impact on relationships and society illuminates the root causes of many interpersonal and social struggles. It encourages a shift from blame and division toward compassion, dialogue, and healing. By confronting the shadow collectively, humanity can move toward a more peaceful and inclusive future, where the hidden aspects of the psyche are no longer sources of fear, but catalysts for transformation. The journey to overcoming the destructive influence of the shadow begins with cultivating awareness, a conscious effort to recognize, accept, and integrate those hidden parts of ourselves that have long remained in the unconscious. Carl Jung emphasized that true psychological growth and individuation depend on this process of bringing the shadow into the light of consciousness. Without awareness, the shadow continues to exert control covertly, shaping behavior, perceptions, and relations in ways that often lead to suffering and conflict. Therefore, cultivating awareness is the foundational step toward transforming the shadow from a source of inner turmoil into a wellspring of personal strength and wisdom. Awareness involves a willingness to observe and acknowledge the less desirable aspects of the self, including impulses, fears, biases, and vulnerabilities that we typically reject or deny. This requires honest self-reflection and the courage to face uncomfortable truths. Many individuals resist this process because it challenges their self-image and exposes internal contradictions. However, the refusal to engage with the shadow only deepens its power, as unconscious material remains unprocessed and can erupt unexpectedly through projections, compulsions, or destructive patterns. A key practice for cultivating shadow awareness is the development of mindfulness, the ability to observe thoughts, feelings, and behaviors without immediate judgment or suppression. Mindfulness creates a space where unconscious impulses can surface safely, enabling individuals to recognize recurring patterns and triggers. This heightened self-observation fosters insight into how the shadow influences emotional reactions and decisions. Through mindfulness, one learns to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, thereby reducing the shadow's disruptive impact. Another critical element in the integration process is self-compassion. Accepting the shadow involves recognizing that all humans carry imperfections and contradictions. Self-compassion counters the shame and self-condemnation often associated with shadow traits, creating an environment where healing can occur. By embracing oneself fully, including shadow elements, individuals develop resilience and psychological holiness. This acceptance allows previously suppressed parts of the psyche to express themselves constructively, enriching personality and creativity. The integration of the shadow also requires active engagement with unconscious material, often facilitated through therapeutic or reflective practices. Jungian psychotherapy, dream analysis, and expressive arts therapies are valuable tools for exploring the shadow in depth. Dreams, for instance, frequently reveal symbolic representations of shadow content, providing clues for conscious examination. Art, writing, and other creative outlets offer alternative pathways to access and process shadow material that might be difficult to articulate verbally. These modalities assist in translating unconscious material into conscious understanding, promoting transformation. Importantly, integration is not about eradicating the shadow, but rather transforming its energy. When integrated, shadow traits can become sources of vitality, creativity, and authentic expression. For example, aggression can be channeled into assertiveness, fear into prudence, and envy into motivation for self-improvement. This transformation enhances psychological flexibility and enriches interpersonal relationships, as individuals become more aware of their complexities and less likely to project negativity onto others. Cultivating awareness and integration also has profound social implications. When individuals work on their shadows, they contribute to reducing collective projections that fuel societal conflicts and prejudices. Social healing and reconciliation depend on the collective capacity for self-reflection and responsibility. Communities that encourage open dialogue about shadow issues, such as biases, historical injustices, and systemic dysfunctions, create conditions for more inclusive and equitable societies. The integration process thus operates at both individual and collective levels, reinforcing each other. Spiritual traditions often align with Jung's insights, emphasizing the importance of self, knowledge, and acceptance as prerequisites for enlightenment and inner peace. Many spiritual practices encourage confronting inner darkness as a path to awakening, highlighting the universality of the shadow experience. This convergence between psychology and spirituality underscores the holistic nature of shadow integration, encompassing mind, body, and spirit. Despite its benefits, the process of cultivating shadow awareness is ongoing and requires commitment. The shadow continually evolves as new unconscious material emerges throughout life. Therefore, lifelong vigilance and openness to self-exploration are essential. Supportive environments, whether therapeutic settings, trusted relationships, or contemplative communities, can facilitate this work by providing safety and encouragement. Ultimately, the path of awareness and integration leads to psychological freedom and authenticity. By embracing the shadow, individuals reclaim parts of themselves that were once sources of fear or shame. This reclamation empowers them to live with greater honesty, compassion, and creativity. It fosters a deeper understanding of human nature, bridging inner divides and enabling harmonious coexistence with others. Carl Jung's teachings on the shadow serve as a timeless guide, reminding us that within the darkest parts of ourselves lies the potential for profound growth and transformation. Understanding the shadow and its manifestations is crucial for recognizing the most dangerous signs within ourselves and others. Carl Jung's profound insights reveal that the shadow is not merely a collection of undesirable traits, but a complex, unconscious force that shapes behavior and perception in subtle yet powerful ways. By acknowledging the shadow's presence and its role in psychological projection, we learn to discern the hidden motivations behind actions that they may otherwise seem inexplicable or threatening. The process of cultivating awareness and integration emerges as a vital path to reclaiming personal power, fostering inner balance, and reducing the shadow's destructive influence. This journey demands courage, self-reflection, and compassion, guiding us toward greater authenticity and psychological wholeness. Moreover, recognizing these dynamics equips us to navigate interpersonal and societal challenges with wisdom and vigilance, ultimately contributing to healthier relationships and communities. Carl Jung's warning urges us to stay alert, not out of fear, but with informed awareness, so we may transform the shadow from a source of danger into an opportunity for profound growth and transformation.